Flawless victory.
Well, mostly flawless. Mortal Kombat was directed by Simon McQuoid, his first directorial debut, and the story follows MMA fighter Kool, who seeks out Earth's greatest champions in order to protect the universe against the enemies of Outworld in a high-stakes battle. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Repster, where movies and entertainment are our reputation. So, Mortal Kombat, I hadn't really played any of the games per se, like especially the more modern games. I hung up my PlayStation controller a long time ago, back when PlayStation 3s was still a thing. So I never really got into the most modern games. I may have played like some of the arcade games, like when I'd go to the beach, just your basic average family trip. But other than that, I never really been into the games that much, but I have watched some videos on here where people was playing some of the Mortal Kombats, and they were pretty brutal. But I have watched the movies, the 1990s movies, a lot growing up. And looking back at those, I realize how cheesy they are. First one, yeah, is a little bit of a question mark. Second one, oh God.
As long as I have the power, Khan, you will never rule this world.
As long as the portal remains open, your world becomes my world.
This one definitely made up for that one. There has not been a Mortal Kombat movie and adaptation since 1997, since Mortal Kombat Annihilation. That being said, let's move on with the positives of Mortal Kombat. First and foremost, and I have to make this very clear, from the moment that this movie was announced, and from the moment that the trailers got released, I always knew that they were going to do a backstory on Sub-Zero and Scorpion, which has always fascinated me. Even though I didn't really play that much of the games, I watched the 1990s movies constantly, and I really loved the way they wrote these characters in this movie. In the originals, they were more like henchmen, but in this, they gave a really pretty solid backstory, especially to how Scorpion became Scorpion. And the first 7, 10, 12 minutes is actually on here, like everywhere for people to view. So you probably already watched the first few minutes of this film. So it's out there. So most of you probably already watched it. But for those of you who haven't, spoiler alert, it does show how Scorpion became Scorpion. And it's pretty tragic. I won't get into too much. I won't spoil it too much, but it's pretty tragic. It's pretty brutal, and you really got to feel for him. You really got to feel for Scorpion. Even the way Scorpion says, "Get over here," was 10 times better in the movie than what the trailer showed. Usually in the trailers, it's not actually what you see when the movie actually comes out. They re-edit it, and it's almost like the filmmakers kind of heard our complaints, because the way he said that line in the trailer was not that strong at all. It just didn't really fly with me. So whenever the movie was edited, I guess around the time the trailer was released, I guess the filmmaker somehow heard that, and they decided to re-edit it, or re-loop it, or whatever the hell they did, and it was quite satisfying. Granted, it wasn't as good as the 1995's Scorpion's Get Over Here, but still, it was definitely an improvement over the trailer. When Scorpion showed up, I almost cheered. But I love the whole backstory, the whole chemistry, and how and why these characters hate each other so much. And it really set the tone for the film. It really toned it up for me. And Sub-Zero was an awesome supervillain. I swear, he's probably in one of my top favorite supervillains. I'm not going to say what number because there's so many out there. I'll have to recalculate that, but he's definitely in the top. He's visceral, he's brutal. I swear, I mean, the 1990s movies has nothing compared to how they wrote Sub-Zero in this new film, in this new Mortal Kombat. He's kind of like Thanos, if Thanos had the power to freeze stuff. I know that's an odd comparison. Mortal Kombat, MCU, still. If Thanos had the power to free stuff, it'd kind of be a little bit simpler. But yeah, definitely a top favorite of mine. A really great supervillain. When I was watching the trailers, I wasn't quite sure if he was going to be the supervillain, the one of the main villains of this film, of this storyline, but he did not disappoint.
I am Sub-Zero.
Kano was great. He was one of those characters that you'd love to hate, but you can't really hate him because he was so hilarious. He was everything that you expect. He was disrespectful to the other characters. He was a straight up asshole throughout the whole film. But he made you laugh. He made you gut bust. And there were several people in the theater that was actually laughing only when he would show up. Not that I'm saying that they didn't enjoy the rest of the movie, but he was one of the hearts of it, that's for sure. The fights were cool. Now, let me be clear. I'm putting this in the positive and in the later mixed. But the fights were cool. In the end, you get all the fatalities that the games brought out. You know, minus the spine ripping out. They didn't go that far, but you get plenty of carnage candy. Of course, this is a hard R. When they went into production of this movie, I could tell the writers and the filmmakers were like, you know what? Let's stick to as close to the game as we can. Let's make this violent. Let's make this brutal. Let's make this gory. And that you do get. The fatalities in this, it's as if kind of you were playing the game, because that's how each fight sequence would end. It does end pretty gruesome, pretty gory, and you'll be satisfied with that segment. There are some cool special effects, especially when Goro shows up. He was freaky. I mean, unlike the 90s version, as much cheese as that showed, it was like animatronic in that one. And this, Goro was CGI, and you know, with the modern technology, you know, go figure. But he didn't disappoint. He was actually pretty gruesome. He was pretty freaky. He wasn't in it that much, but he was still pretty gruesome. The set pieces looked great, especially Outworld, definite improvement over Annihilation. And as I mentioned before, let's dive into the mixed. The fighting sequences. As much as I like the fatalities in those, how they ended. When the fights would actually go into play, the editing would be kind of choppy in some of them. Not all of them was like that. You know, not all of them was that choppy as like most of them would compare to like Oliver Megaton's filmmaking, how Taken 2 and 3 and Columbiana was. Those films would just start off the charts with their editing. But it wasn't that bad for this film. A lot of people will tell you different, but I just didn't see it. Especially with the Goro scene when Kool was fighting him. It didn't look all that choppy to me. I believe that there was like 2 different people that was editing this. So like, I guess one was not so quick on the choppiness, and the other was a little bit too choppiness, you know, if you get my drift. I mean, it wasn't that bad. And some might compare like some of the fight sequences to a PG-13 until they get to the fatalities. Like, some of them might compare, like some of the fight sequences might mention, well, some of them weren't that driven, weren't that brutal. But, you know, to each his own. I think that they were brutal enough. Yeah, there were exceptions, and there's like probably other films that showed like way more through and through. But I wasn't disappointed with the fighting scenes myself. That's just me. So that's why I'm putting it into the mixed. Yes, they could have chilled a little bit with the editing, but in the end, with the fatalities, that's what you would really come to a Mortal Kombat movie for anyway. Flawless victory. And last but not least, let's dive into the negatives. The rest of the characters I didn't really care for. Other than Jax and Sonya, they were okay. The rest I couldn't get into. Especially with Shang Tsung. In the original, the guy that played Shang Tsung in that was so brutal, so visceral. You knew he wasn't playing around.
Your brother's soul is mine. You will be next.
But in this, The guy that they got to play, which was the guy that the Joker mentioned that if Batman ever caught him in the Dark Knight, he'll catch him and make him squeal. That was the guy that played Shang Tsung in this. And he didn't really deliver that much for me. There's probably some of you that didn't really have a problem with this performance, but I just didn't really get that much out of him. I didn't really get that scared, senseless vibe off of him that I got from the guy that played Shang Tsung in the original Mortal Kombat. He just didn't really deliver that much in this film. He just didn't quite live up to my expectations. Even the Kool character was misplaced, which is what this whole film was based on, pretty much. Other than Scorpion and Sub-Zero, I wish the whole entire film would have focused more on that than this Kool character. He just felt misplaced. I didn't really get that much out of him either. He was just a guy that was there. He felt out of place. That's all I could pretty much say. Of course, he's one of those newer characters. I don't think he was a character that was ever devised up in the game. I know he definitely wasn't in the 90s movies, but he was just there. Didn't really care that much for him. He just felt irrelevant. And the score. I've got to talk about the score. The Immortals, who did the song Techno Syndrome, was awesome in the 90s versions. And now this is just for nostalgic purposes. A lot of the younger ones won't know about this unless they get introduced to it like before they watch this movie. But to me, I just felt like it was a definite missed opportunity. They hardly ever played the song. And when they did, it was more discoed up. If that makes any sense. They had to change it, and I don't understand that. I guess it's because it's a new generation, and it's a newer movie, it's a reboot. But, why? I don't get that. Can't they just make just one exception? Maybe when they come out with a sequel, if this makes enough money, they'll come out with a sequel, and hopefully they'll wise up on that at least. Just saying. Mortal Kombat 2021 may not be for everybody, but if you like action, gore, and plenty of carnage candy, you won't be disappointed. You need to see it on the big screen. Yeah. The whole movie just felt on par, and it was quite satisfying. Of course, I'm not really a fan of the games, but I'm just a fan of some ass-kicking and good action scenes and good special effects. I mean, there's no crime in that. I mean, if it's wrong, then I don't want to be right. Take me to jail.
Lock me up! Lock me up! Go away, the kid!
If you're not a fan of the games, this may not be for you. But if you are a fan of the games and expecting to see some gory fatalities, unlike the 90s films, you'll love Mortal Kombat 2021 for its sweet delight. So, are you a fan? Is this your favorite Mortal Kombat adaptation? Or are you more of a fan of the 90s version? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. Stay tuned for more videos and reviews coming soon. Like, subscribe, comment, and share if you hadn't already. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace, the Rapper.